Welcome, welcome, patrons! Today we have more Nations of Thedas, and I can't think of anything else to say, so let's just go into Rivain. History. So as we go over the lesser-known Nations of Thedas, the details start to get kind of fuzzy. So while Ferelden or Norlais have a very specific history, we don't have that much on Rivain. A lot of details that we know of also came from weird sources and may one day be rewritten or changed because it technically wasn't in official media. Also, some dates are conflicted in different sources, but I'm going to go with the timeline the newer World of Thedas books creates. So we aren't sure how the city-state of Rivain started, but we do know, thanks to a forum post by then lead writer of the Dragon Age series, David Gator, that the people of Rivain came from the islands close to the Donarchs, which is the jungle up by the Anderfels. Most likely they came down with the other human tribes and settled where they are now. We know that they were originally part of the Tevinter Imperium, which pretty much all of Thedas was at one point, but Rivain started to rebel in negative 120 Ancient and was aided by many city-states in the Free Marshes. Eventually, 76 years later, the Kingdom of Rivain is founded in negative 44 Ancient. And honestly, we don't hear much from Rivain for almost another 600 years. During this mysterious 600 years, we do know that the First Blight did touch Rivain at some point, although we don't know really how bad. We also know that the Chantry tried to convert the area, but it didn't take as well as they had hoped. I'll go into detail on this later in the video, but I bring it up now to set up that Rivain and the Chantry didn't have that close of ties, and they weren't exactly happy with one another. After this mysterious 600 years, it's now 512 Exalted. The Fourth Blight rises out of Antiva and hits Rivain extremely hard with Darkspawn. Apparently, most of the area was completely controlled by the Darkspawn for the entire Blight, and was only freed in the Battle of Aisley, which Aisley is located in Rivain, where the Archdemon Andorral fell. And here is yet another gap in Rivaini history, but one would assume that the next 100 years would be focused on rebuilding what the nation had lost during the Blight. Eventually, in 632 Steel, the Qunari land in northern Rivain. This marks the moment the war with the Qunari began, and within the next 10 years, the Qunari have taken control over almost all of Rivain. In 725 Storm, the Chantry finally gets its shit together and calls for an Exalted March in the Qunari to try and retake Rivain. 3 Exalted Marches, 50 years, and the death of a large portion of the population of Rivain later, the Qunari signed the Lomarin Accord and let Rivain go. 784 Storm is actually a big year for Rivain, so let's focus on this for a bit. First, the Lomarin Accord. This is a large subject, but the basics are this. At this point in history, the Qunari had been driven off most of Rivain and were only able to hold the port of Kant-Ar. Rivain had been torn to shreds at this point, and both sides were wondering what was worth fighting for in this area. The Qunari and the Chantry made a deal, and the Qunari let go of the main continent of Thedas in exchange for Parvalan and Saharan. All but Tevinter signed this, which is why Tevinter and the Qunari still war over Saharan. But anyway, Rivain is now freed as the Qunari pack up and go. Except many of the Rivaini people still followed the Qun, and even though they were told to leave the nation with the rest of the Qunari, many of the converts had only known Rivain to be their home, so they stayed. This would be Rivain's first violation of the Lomarin Accord. And strong Rivaini nationalists and the Chantry were pretty unhappy with this, as they were afraid the people of the Qun would try to take over the land. So the Chantry tries to convert those of the Qun to the Maker, which, remember, the culture of Rivain wasn't too happy with Andrastrianism to begin with, and so it fails. Doing what they believe to be the next best thing, they begin to kill off anyone who believes in the Qun and buries them in mass graves around Rivain. This would be Rivain's second violation of the Lomarin Accord. And after all this violence, Rivain lays low in Thedas' history, and the next 200 years would probably be focused on rebuilding all that was lost during the war with the Qunari. The next time something major happens in Rivain, it's now 940 Dragon, and the tension between mages and Templars are at its highest. Many circles have rebelled all over Thedas at this point, and the Seekers go out to the Rivaini circle at Daresmud to find a circle that is so loose with their mages they are basically apostates. The Grand Cleric of Rivain calls for the circle to be annulled. It's unknown how many died or escaped during this time, but what we do know is that the first enchanter Rivella and the Circle of Daresmud is said to have put up quite the fight before most were slain. Geography. Rivain, unlike the rest of the nations of Thedas, is a peninsula, meaning that it's mostly surrounded by water. On the map itself, it looks like there is a large mountain range running through the middle of the nation, but we don't actually know anything about that. Being up north, we also know that Rivain is much warmer than Ferelden and Norlais. As for settlements, the capital of Rivain is Daresmud, and is said to be the really only place the Chantry actually has any real authority in the nation. There's Aisley, and this is the battleground where the Fourth Blight ended. Kant-Ar, which is a completely Qunari-based settlement, and is said to be highly fortified. It's also known as being the only peaceful Qunari settlement in Thedas. and Lomarin, said to be a politically neutral port and is obviously the place where the Lomarin Accords were signed. Currently it's home to pirates of the Felicita Armada, and overall it kind of sounds like a bit of a lawless port. Politics. So apparently Rivain is a monarchy, but fuck me, I can't find shit on it other than it existing. I could literally only find 3 things about the monarchy and its lineage. 1. We know that Queen Asha, who was most famous for her marriage and political dealings in Antiva, was a minor princess from Rivain. 2. Apparently the royal family and a few nobles are the few Andrastians in the nation. And 3. A codex entry mentions that Rivain is currently ruled by a queen, but I don't know her name. Other than that, I can't find anything else on who this royal family even is. But what we do know of Rivain politically revolves around much more local political dealings. Rivain is a matriarchal society and believes in general that women are best suited to rule. Small communities in Rivain are traditionally ruled by the eldest women in society and is led by Seers, which I'll go into in a bit. Rivain also believes less in a currency-based economy, although there is one, and more in the idea that communities need to work together to support each other and even helping other nearby communities when they are in need. I'm not actually that good with real-life political shit and terminology, but to me this sounds like socialism. Culture. Religion. So like I mentioned previously, the Chantry and Rivain don't get along too well. Even today, those that worship the Maker are in the minority. The reason for this is that traditional Rivaini culture relied on seers for leadership. As these women were mages, some of who became willingly possessed by spirits, the beliefs of the Chantry called for Rivaini leaders to be separated from their communities and forbidden from using their abilities and sometimes even killed. Wow, who would have guessed that the Channelite wasn't popular there? Even when the Chantry did gain enough traction to eventually establish a circle there, female mages were trained in traditional seer magics, including willing possession, and mages' families lived with them in a fairly open settlement, and it acted more like a typical Rivaini community, just mostly made of mages. Sadly, this circle, which was probably the best to live in for mages, is no longer, but I would suggest that if circles were to be enforced again, it would be more like this one. Probably less possession though, that would be good. Anyway, back on religion, those that do worship the Maker and belong to the Chantry are strongest in the capital of Darsmud. And because of its overall lack of Chantry enforcement, Rivain in general has become a very popular place with those who are in trouble with Chantry law. The Qun is fairly popular in Rivain as well. Although the Lomarin Accord called for the Qun to go back, many stubborn Qun converts stayed put. Apparently the nation gets more Qun influence the closer you get to Kant R. Now you may be asking, why did Rivain not accept the Chantry but they did accept the Qun? Well, it didn't. Just a larger percentage of people were forced into the Qun than in the Chantry. But the largest religion in Rivain by far is the unnamed traditional religion that it has held since the nation's founding. This religion is described as being pantheistic in that they believe that their god is the universe. They worship the nature around them. In its religion, female mages, called Seers, are said to openly practice magic for the community, and seem to act very similar as a dayless keeper. One main difference from keepers is that Seers are said to be more focused on spirits and allow themselves to be possessed with them for the betterment of the community and to see into the future. Dress. I don't have much for this section, but here we go. We have seen 2 characters with unique outfits from Rivain, Isabela and Duncan. Looking at Isabela, her clothes are loose and drapey and fairly revealing. While this might be a character trait, we do see in a flashback to her homeland in the comics Those Who Speak, the people were mainly dressed in loose and drapey white robes. Although I should say in this particular scene, they're talking about conversion to Qunari, so this may be more Qunariist dress, although I doubt Isabela would continue wearing clothing similar to something that she hates. Duncan is only half Rivaini and didn't grow up in the area, but he even wears some loose white robes with his armor. Both also wear gold jewelry, particularly earrings, and Isabela also mentions that sailors are fond of tattoos in Rivain. Something I also want to bring up on this topic is that the Dragon Age wiki says social standing in Rivain is often marked by tattoos and body piercings. The more elaborate one's decoration is, the higher one's rank. They don't give us source for this, and I can't find one either. I don't know if this is some blog post I missed, or a tweet, or something, but I have not been able to find it at all. It might be true, and maybe that's why they put it there, but I have not found an official source for this. Food. What we know of Rivaini food comes down to a few factoids. Empress Celine apparently is fond of a Rivaini tea with cinnamon, ginger, and cloves, and then in Hardin Hightown it also describes a Rivaini tea being something that the rich in Kirkwall are very fond of. Lomarin Red is also very popular, and World of Thages describes it as some sort of sauce that is supposed to imitate blood. I don't know. But from the recipe, it kind of sounds like a more flavorful ketchup. There are also mentions of bananas in Rivain, and banana bread being a very popular dish there. Relationship with other races. Elves. So remember that the beef with Thedas and Elves is pretty much based on the Chantry entirely. So with Rivain not having much to do with the Chantry, they're actually pretty cool with the Elves. Here is also a disputed fact. David Gator said that the Dalish have a semi-permanent settlement in Lomarin, but in a banter between Merrill and Isabela, Isabela doesn't seem to know that one exists and acts like the Dalish have never been to the island. So yeah, one could be true, one could be false, or both could be true. It is possible that the Dalish do have a settlement there, but it would be fairly new and Isabela missed it, or it's fairly secret and Isabela doesn't know about it. Dwarves. I've seen absolutely nothing regarding the Dwarves in Rivain, but as we know that Orzammar doesn't have any strong enemies, one would assume that they actually have a fairly decent relationship. Qunari. Rivain seems to be split on their opinion on the Qunari. While the royalty and nobles of Rivain are not too keen on them due to the bloody history with the nation, the commoners who still hold tight to their native religion get along with them fairly well. This positive relationship is still rocky, however, as there are still those who view the Qun as slavery, but they still live in harmony with the Qunari as it's easier to live and let live. And that, dear patrons, is all that we know of Rivain. I would also like to say that I'm opening up a Patreon. I should have an official video up by now and what that looks like, so I'll link down below for that. I don't actually monetize my videos on YouTube for various reasons, so if you want to help support the channel, this would probably be the best way to do it. And if you don't want to or aren't able to give, that's completely okay, and I promise I won't be putting any lore-related content locked behind a paywall. Anyway, do you still have lingering questions, proofs that I'm wrong, comments about your own fan theory? Feel free to tweet me at @Gilderthon on Twitter or send a PM to user Gilnan on Reddit. The rest, you're all.